I went to Southampton. Actually, I initially went to London, and then I went to Southampton for my BSc, and I went back to London to work. It's around the time when I went back to London to work that something started to bug me. You might remember that 10, 11 years ago, we were going through the subprime crisis, and the subprime crisis caused the crash of interest rates. So as a young bachelor, still am a bachelor, with some savings to spare at the end of each month, I was wondering, what can I do with my money? Because we have a vehicle in England called ISA, Instant Savings Account, which once upon a time were paying quite good interest, but nowadays pays next to nothing. And as the curve start going ever so low,
Hey, Baraka, you went on mute for a second. We can't hear you anymore.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, I pressed the wrong button. I was saying that back in 2010, I came across an opportunity because I was, just like you might be right now, looking for something. They say that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So what happened to me is an opportunity came by my way, and I was bold enough to explore it. And by exploring it, it led to where we are today. So the format of today's meeting, I like to call it a chat, basically. It's very, very informal. I'm going to be talking briefly about the history of the business, ask you to answer a small survey to get your idea on some questions that we have, and then take you to the rest of the business. And then I'll take the Q&A. But please feel free to ask any question at the end of the presentation. It's an informal chat. I'm just like you, Congolese guy, just looking to do something better with whatever money I had. So I'm going to share my screen with you in a second, and I'll take you through the history of Yetu PIC. So I'll minimize this to make it easier. This is the project that got me started. So back in 2010, a developer was having a big issue with this particular property. Now, it doesn't look like it, but it's an apartment block. And it's an apartment block that is actually well located. If you were to go on Google Maps, you clicked on this particular destination here. By the way, I'll send you later on some links where you can have the information. So the particular property that got me started was here. So the little circle here in red you're seeing is called Gombe. It's the city center of Kinshasa. For those of you who have not yet returned or who have never been here, so this is our little downtown, as you guys call it. The developer had his apartment block, this particular unlikely apartment block, right there where the dot is. And sadly, here in DRC, they don't lend you money for project finance. So having run out of cash, he was in serious trouble. So he approached me because back in the day when these interest rates started to go south, I started to think, me and some friends, how can we create a bank for Congolese expats such as us to invest back home? And around that time, I think the banking sector was opened up. The license was costing somewhere close to $10 million. So we couldn't find the money, but we were open to looking at other alternatives. There is such a thing as a shadow bank, which is also called an investment fund. And we started to think along those lines. Perhaps we could create a shadow bank to be able to exploit these opportunities in DRC. And then the opportunity came by our desk. So this particular apartment block that I'm showing you. The developer just needed a small bridge loan to take him from this to the finished product. Knowing the location, I thought it was quite a good investment. So myself and a few other people, we decided to give it a go. So we placed our funds. We pushed the property from this to this in 2011. And by June 2011, we nearly finished the block. Having finished the block, the developer sold an apartment to pay us off, interest and principal. And then we pursued, we carried on our journey. And to me, this was just an opportunity to fructify my capital, because around that time also, I was looking at how I can get on the housing ladder in London. London is a very, very expensive city, so you need quite a large deposit. So whatever money I was making and I was saving, I was thinking, how can I fructify this capital in order to earn a bit more money? So this happened. I thought it was a one-off and I forgot about it. Little did I know that around this time in DRC and until today, there is a huge demand for property, certainly in the big cities. There is a trend that is happening across Africa, and that is urbanization. In all the big cities, I will send you later on a bit more information on this for those of you who would like to receive it. Urbanization is the trend across Africa, whether it's in Kinshasa, Lagos, wherever you want to be. Most people who are living in the small cities are converging to the bigger cities because that's where the opportunity lies for them and their families. So therefore, there's a need for better residential properties across Africa. And in Congo, it just happens to be the case that there's a shortage of about 4 million homes. And that got me thinking a bit. But for me, this was just a one-off and I forgot about it. 2 years later on, the developer came to me with another project. The second project was just 500 meters down the road, still the same neighborhood. So he came to me, he bought another house, an existing house, this one here. He knocked it down and he started to rebuild something. So he started this time to build an apartment block of 8 apartments, of 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom. And eventually, sadly for him, it got to this stage, we're talking January 2014. Once again, he ran out of cash. He called again Baraka because we had a good relationship back then, and we still have a good relationship. And he asked me, look, can you also find me an investor for this one? This time the ticket was slightly bigger, and I did not have all the funds. So I started ringing around a few people that I knew of Congolese heritage or not, who might be interested. To me, it was just, let's help this guy out. And if we can do good, great. Luckily, we did find some investors and we pushed the project from that to that and eventually to that. So when the project was finished, this apartment block of 8 apartment of 3 or 4 bedroom, we were paid off our interest and our principal. And this was an 18 months project. The first one was a 12 months project. So I started to think to myself, well, maybe this could become something more serious. Perhaps I should explore it more. So we ended up doing a market study, which I will share with you in a second. But before taking you through that market study, and in order not to influence your answers, I would like to ask you to respond to a small survey that I've created. I do this often enough throughout these events. I create a survey and I recommend it to the audience to make the exchange between us very, very interactive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to post a tiny survey, a link, and it takes only 1 minute because all the answers are on the screen. All you just have to do is to select the answer which apply to yourself. And then what I'll do, I'll unpack the survey responses to see whether some of your ideas are similar to what the people we surveyed back in 2015, 2016 told us. So here it is. I'm gonna post it here in the chat room. Let me know if you have received it. I'll give you guys about a minute and I'll take you through the answer to the survey in a second. let me know by thumbs up if you've completed the survey. That way, at least I have an idea of how many people have done it. Thank you. Quite a few are still completing it. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, you can still complete it. You know, I just don't want to hold us up, but I will share my screen once again with you, and you'll be able to see what I'm seeing here in the back office, as we call it. So here it is. Back in 2015, in order to better understand the reasoning of our potential audience who wanted us to create Yetu PIC, we created this survey here, Diaspora Investment Fund. By now, we have over 1,500 respondents to this particular survey. But the one that I've created just for this particular session is this. So I'm going to refresh the page, and hopefully we'll see how many responses have come up and how many of you are perhaps thinking along A or B line. Perhaps some of your ideas are very similar to what some of the people that we surveyed back in 2015, 2016 said. So we have 23 responses, and maybe we'll have more later on. I will take you through the results in a second, and it'd be interesting to find out where your thoughts are lying on several topics. Okay, perfect. So how likely are you to invest in real estate? Some people are very likely. So there's certainly an interest in investing. We're talking about here, roughly speaking, 60% of the people are open to investing. That's a good sign. In terms of investment, what if this return that we were expecting to achieve was 10%, how much would you be prepared to invest? And over 64% are saying at least, actually, I'll say actually literally everybody is open to investing. That's really good because we don't have any no responses. That's really good. What will be the primary reason for investing? We're talking here, right? Additional stream of income. That's interesting, actually. Additional stream of income followed by prepare for the long term, yes, and capital appreciation. That was me back 10 years ago. And investment horizon, up to 2 years, roughly a quarter. 40% are going for 40 up to 5 years. 10 years, we're talking about 28%. That's really good. And we even have long-term investor. Wow, you are a fantastic audience. I really am. I'm pleased to be talking to you for sure. So this is really good. The survey that we share with the Congolese diaspora also reveals some interesting insight along these lines. I will take you through that. Let me see if I can take away this floating panel. It's much easier. So this is what the 15 odd people that we surveyed back then told us. In terms of the investment horizon, the majority of investors were talking about investing, a quarter were open to less than 2 years. Certainly 75% were less than 5 years, which kind of echoes what I can see here. Here we're talking about 64% are up to 5 years. And here we're talking about roughly 73%. So similar thoughts. Attitude toward investing in DRC. This is the survey that we've just done now. Attitude toward investing in DRC and the appetite for investing. A lot of people in the Congolese context were really open to investing. And I think from what I gather here, we also have a lot of people open to the idea of investing in terms of the responses, I cannot see anyone saying no. So that's really good. Here we're talking about 100% of people open to investing. And motivation for investing, here predominantly people are talking about additional streams of income. In the Congolese context, the motivation for investing was initially prepare for the long term, followed by capital appreciation, and then there was additional source of income. So yeah, these are the key reasons why people choose to invest in DRC. Because in my own instance, back in 2010, I was looking for capital appreciation in order to raise enough funds to be able to buy my flat back in London. So that was me, basically. So the reason why we ended up creating Yetu PIC is because we started to realize that a lot of people were in our shoes. Congolese expats looking at a secure channel to deploy their capital from London, from New York, from Tokyo, for wherever they happen to be, into Congo and back. So what we ended up doing is creating Yetu PIC. Yetu is a Swahili word, which means our, and PIC stands for Property Investment Club. So in a sense, it's a generic word to say our Property Investment Club. And what is it that we do at the Yetu PIC? We try to summarize it in one particular sheet. I'll take you through that in a second. This particular document here, much easier for everybody to understand what's going on. So this is Yetu PIC in a snapshot, right? So we stand here in the middle. We have on one hand, investors at the top, and on the other hand, we have property projects in Africa. We're starting initially with the market of Congo, but it's not going to be exclusive because we are very much minded to go to different markets across the African continent, certainly the markets that are in need of these kind of services. So what do? We identify these projects on behalf of the membership, projects which we think are very, very likely to yield a good return on investment. And then we present it to you, the investors, in the form of projects that have been broken up into shares of $1,000 each. So whatever the project size is, we break it up into small shares of $1,000 each. And that's how you, the investor, can crowd fund into the project. So you buy whatever shares of the project that you are comfortable buying. By doing so, that's step one. You allow Yetu PIC to invest in these projects, and we have a duration of investment, a maturity for our investments of 24 months, simply because, as you have seen in the survey, at this stage, a lot of people are still short-term investors. They don't want to go beyond a certain time horizon. Perhaps with more education, they might be open to going into long-term investments, but at this stage, more and more people are just thinking of going for 2 years or less. So we find this project and we finance them because the banks cannot do that. And at the same time as we are financing them, we are also selling the apartments in the project to those in the diaspora or those who live here in Congo who are thinking of buying homes, but they do not know how to do so, and they do not want to be ripped off. Because certainly for those of us who are of Congolese heritage, we would have heard of stories of people, relatives or so, who would have sent money to someone here in DRC or in Africa, because I've come across people from Ivory Coast who have had the same problem. We are in the West, we're working hard for our money, and then we send the money to Africa, to the relatives, to help us acquire some piece of real estate, only to be ripped off. They buy the wrong piece of property, or they don't even buy the piece of property, or they build you something that is not worth the while. And eventually you find yourself much deceived. So to avoid that, what we do, we take away the family or the friends and we substitute them with the bank, a local bank that is open to doing business with the diaspora or with international investors, as we like to call them. So that's step 3. So these investors, therefore, buy the properties that we are developing, and the cash start flowing back up to the developer, up to Yetu PIC, and up to you, the investor, with a certain return that is well established at the beginning of the project. So you already know how much you are going to get before even walking into the project. So that's in a sense the little project, the little snapshot of Yetu PIC here. The investor buys units, shares into Yetu PIC, which allows Yetu PIC to develop the properties. At the same time as Yetu PIC is developing these properties, Yetu PIC also is selling the houses off plan ideally, but sometimes we have to wait until construction has reached a certain stage. And then the bank finances the purchase of the property by mortgage, and the money starts flowing back up to the developer, up to Yetu PIC, and back into the hands of the investor with a well-established return on investment. By the way, the investor can be a moral or a physical person. They can also be of Congolese heritage or not. So we are not excluding people who are open to exploring ways of earning a better return on their investments than they are currently earning wherever they happen to be. So at this stage, I'll stop here and I will take some questions. And I think it'd be good if we can make the whole session more interactive that way. Any question?
Hey, Baraka. My name's Adolphine. Thank you for doing this. It's quite helpful. Like you said, I've had issues with family stealing properties, buying the wrong things, or eating the money. So it's, I'm experienced in that situation. So I have a quick question. First of all, about which DRC banks do you use? Because I have an account with Raw Bank for my business back home. I have an office in Gombe and I'm familiar with the area. And the fees associated with that business account is quite high, just for maintenance, to take money out to buy things, like I bought a farm in Laos, and the carrying cost for that account is so high that I'm actually thinking about closing that account because it just eats money every month. So which bank do you use, and does that play a role in what the windfall is for the limited partners, investors in your fund?
Absolutely. So we tend to focus on Pan-African banks that have branches here. So right now we have a relationship with the second largest bank called Equity Bank. This is a listed Kenyan player that is in 6 African countries, including Congo. And in Kenya, they are already the largest bank. So we work with them, but recently we've been called to work with 2 more banks. One is First Bank of Nigeria. For the Nigerians in the house, they'll probably be happy to hear that. The second one is a bank called Bank of Africa, another Pan-African bank. And also we are in advanced discussion with a EcoBank, which is the most Pan-African of them all. So we tend to focus on this bank for one reason, because of stability. These banks have head offices in different parts of Africa, which means that if ever the worst was to happen, the head office can always bail out the DRC units. But what I like about Equity Bank is actually they are very, very competitive in terms of the fees. So Yetu PIC, with our relationship with them, we can allow people such as yourself to open an account, and it only takes 3 working days. So if you ever were thinking of switching, we can work on that.
Yeah, I definitely want to switch. And also, are you just doing apartments, or are you also considering land? Because land right now is a hot ticket item in Kinshasa. And I know the Seno, the church, is selling off a lot of pieces of land, and people are looking to develop it. Is that something that you're also looking at, or are you just looking at apartments?
Good question. Given the sources of our fundings, which is short-term investors such as yourself, we are kind of limited in the business model. We would love to go into different forms of real estate, such as commercial, eventually doing also land. But the investor that you're working with is telling you, I don't want to go beyond a certain time horizon. So we then have to find a formula of entering and exiting a project with a decent return, with the return that we have promised the investor. And for me, the best way to achieve that is, of course, by doing apartments in and around the city center. Why? Because there's always a huge demand for these assets, both from people such as yourself who are coming back on from holiday or who want to come back and settle here. Or you also have the expats who's coming to work here in DRC. And there are very, very few places in Congo, in Kinshasa in particular, where you can be assured that you are going to have a constant flow of tenants or property buyers. So that's why at this stage, we have this particular business model. But eventually, when our audience gets more and more educated about investing and they start having longer term investment horizons, we can then look at other models. But at this stage as a business, we really have to stick to what the audience is telling us. And that's why everything that we do is empirical. We always like to do these surveys to get the impression from our audience. Because if we deviate from that, then we are not really answering your questions.
Great, thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, Baraka. So we actually have a couple folks who have raised their hands, and we have one question in the chat. So I'm going to give you the question in the chat, and then I believe John had raised his hand, and afterwards we'll go to Steve. So we have a question from Steven, who says, hi, Baraka, what is the average ROI or return on investment for your first 2 apartment projects? So if you don't mind starting with that, and then we will go to John and Steve afterwards, the other Steve.
Yes. Yeah, actually, it was quite interesting because I went through my files the other day and I found the information. I'd kept these perhaps one day, it might become useful, and I did find these particular files. So my first investment, I even found the contract of it, was this one. So it was a $30,000 loan to a developer at a 30% year annual rate, because he only wanted 12 months as an investment. So I had to get paid 30,000 plus 9,000. And actually these were my payments back in September 2011. In Congo, you have this cap on how much you can transfer outside of the country. This is to limit capital outflow and limit eventually the incidence of corruption. So my first payment back was in 23rd of September 2011, 9,900. The second payment was on the 26th of September, 9,950. The third payment was on the 27th of September, 9,800. And the fourth one was on the 4th of October, 2011, and that was 9,900. So altogether, I got back my $30,000 initial plus the 30% return on my investments. The second project I made, this was the investment. So I was, by the way, on each of these investments, I'm investor number 1. At least I, meaning Yetu, because we now are an incorporated body. We are investor number 1 because we believe that it's not ethical to recommend something that we have not ourselves tried. So this is me back in 2014 on the 2nd of July, through my account at Barclays, wiring $30,000 to Kinshasa. And then later on being paid through my account at Metrobank. So I got paid back a total of £27,000. But this was before Brexit, by the way, in 2016. For those of us who happen to be in England, we will remember that the interest rate was £1 to $1.5. So $27,000 was pretty much the equivalent of $36,000, something along those lines. And that's what I got paid. So the first project was 30%, the second project was 20%. And nowadays, the upcoming projects that we have, they average on a yearly basis somewhere between 10 and 15%. Yeah. Any question?
All right, thank you for that. Let's go to John. I know you've been waiting, John W. I see you on the top of my screen. So if you can unmute yourself and ask Baraka your question.
All right, thank you so much, Baraka, for undertaking this initiative. This is really great for some of us who are looking for ways to invest back in the Congo. My one question, I just out of the blue, like beyond just real estate, are you looking into like diversifying your portfolio of investment for people who might have other areas of interest? Myself, I do have a little bit of an interest in infrastructure. So I'm just wondering if that's something that's like down the road that you're thinking about, or what are the prospects for that?
Good question. If I were to take you back to these survey results, share screen, the survey actually, what we're asking people, it's an indirect question. By asking you your investment horizon, what we are also trying to work out is the type of investments that might be suitable for you. Say here, so different assets have different kind of investment horizon or maturity, as you want to call it. Infrastructure are long-term projects, so you're talking about at least 10 or 15 years. You want to be somewhere around here, you know, or maybe beyond 15 years. Whereas at this stage, as you can see, there's a large segment of our population who, if I were to say literally 64%, and I don't know how many people have done this survey thereafter, who are only open to going to up to 5 years. So with that in mind, we have first to start educating people about the process of investing, because in my experience dealing with retail investors is that a lot of people have false expectation about what an investment is. Actually, certainly in our community, I've found that people think that I can lend you $10,000 today, tomorrow they're expecting 20,000 after 6 months. You're thinking, well, that's 100% return in 6 months. How do you make that happen? So with this scheme, we are initially trying to teach our audience about the process of investing, particularly investing through a structured vehicle. And eventually we are starting in real estate, but it's not where we are going to be limiting ourselves. So the model of the crowdfunding initially is applied to the real estate context, residential real estate context, but we can eventually deploy it into companies. We have different businesses here that are doing fantastic things, but these businesses are often looking for cash. We can always look at ways to be, stakeholders in this project. Here we're talking something called venture capital or private equity, if you are familiar with the terms. And here we're talking about assets that can go up to 10 years, investment that can go up to 10 years to develop this company into maturity, and then you can exit, sell your shares in the company and get your money back. And infrastructure, you need to be thinking 10, 15 years, because these are long-term and you get paid small amounts, but over a long period of time. So we are starting in with real estate at this stage for the obvious reasons, but eventually we'll be migrating into different kinds of assets. That's the vision, of course.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So we're gonna go to Steve Dumansky.
Yes, thank you. Baraka, thank you very much for the great insight. And while I understand that the housing sector is in a relatively fragmented market, just going to your guidance, I guess, of the 10 to 15%, is that based on the cap rate or more of like a cash on cash return methodology? And also the 30%, and again, I understand, I apologize if this is a bit specific, but is that more that return like an IRR over like considering the exit over a 2-year threshold where you're implying?
Yes, I didn't hear you well. I'm going to answer based on what I've understood of the question because the sound wasn't clear. But if I get the question is what determines the rate of return? In my experience, it's all to do with the stage of the project. So if I were to go into this document, you better understand it. This initial project was at this stage. The structure was already up. It only needed some cash to push him to the finish line. And the same thing as well as here. So when I came into this project, these two, it was, I won't say it was done, but it was kind of 70% done. He only needed money to finish the finishing touches. Now, because of the finishing the nature of the investment being kind of me coming as an investor at the end or toward the end of the project, I won't get as much as if I were to come at the beginning. So later on, when I do send you this deck, because I will forward it to whomever has expressed an interest in receiving it, we have projects, for instance, like this one, actually is very, very interesting, is the developer who has done this apartment block, he wants to extend it onto the house next door. And now, whereas here, we came in at 65, 70% of the project. Here, we have an opportunity to come in from the outset, and therefore we are going to be having a bigger share of the project, more risk, and therefore we can get more return out of it. So the function is all to do with at which stage we are incorporating a particular project. Right, for 2021, we have two projects. We have this one, which is a ground up development. We are hoping to launch it by July. And we have this one, which actually is a very, very opportunistic project that has come our way, because the developer who started this house sadly passed on last year. I don't know what is because of COVID or what, but he passed on. And having passed on, the heirs don't have the money to finish the project. So they approach Yetu PIC and say, look, you come in, you do what you do, you finish the project and turn this into that. And then you take your consideration, which is going to be some apartments, and you can sell them off, you get your money back, and then we carry on with whatever we got. And because this project is pretty much, I'll say 75% done, of course, it won't take us longer. So this is a 12-month project compared to this one, which is a 24-month project. And therefore, the return on this one will be slightly lower compared to the one here. Because of course, we are taking more risk here. It's taking us more time compared to this one, which is pretty much done. And we are just coming for the finishing touches. So that's what can determine the rate of return on each project.
Thank you for that. Sorry, whoever's speaking.
Patrick, how are you?
I'm sorry, whoever is speaking, we cannot hear you. If you could potentially just write your question in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to you after we address some other questions. And if you have questions and we're not able to answer it today, don't worry, just put them in the chat or send them to myself, and we'll take a log of all these questions and make sure that we give them to Baraka so that he can answer. So I see we have a couple ladies who are waiting to ask some questions. I believe we have Emily who was here first. So if you don't mind unmuting yourself and going ahead and asking your question.
Yes, hopefully you can understand me, everybody. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm based in Germany, and I'm currently an undergrad student. So for me, the whole world of investing is quite new, and I'm self-educating there. And my question is, how should a student prepare for such an opportunity like that? Because currently I don't have the funds for this because I have student debt and all those stuff. And I want to, prepare my way realistically to be maybe in 1 or 2 years, hopefully when COVID situation is going to be better, that I can start to invest. So do you have any tips or advice for the youngers out there?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. In a sense, it's taking me back to where I was 10 years ago. By the way, I was also a young grad when I started this on this road, right? I was just coming up. In fact, I was a couple of months into my first job. So, don't be discouraged. So you are at the very, very beginning of something, hopefully a big movement that we are hoping to spark across DRC. But my best advice to someone like you would be, don't do what the average student does, which is once they get the first job, they start blowing the cash, you see? If I even were to let you into a secret, you will laugh. But my first investment, actually, I went to a bank and asked them to lend me money to buy a car. because they love lending money to young students because these guys don't have credit. I mean, I didn't have much of a credit, but in the private sector, you don't have much and you are starting a career and they know that, oh, of course, you are going to have a long career and then you can easily repay your debt. So I was smart. I took the money and went to invest. Shouldn't have done it, but I did it and it paid off. And today I'm my own boss. I work for myself. So I created my own job. So my tip for you will be, don't waste the opportunity because you are going to have them in your first job, an opportunity to earn an income. Don't just straight away start doing what the average young graduate does, which is to go on expensive holiday, to do to spend money and to enjoy themselves, which they should perhaps. But in my context, I wanted to go somewhere. Initially, I wanted to be able to buy my own house. And I did not have behind me very, very wealthy parents to support me towards that. So I had to find a way to make money. So whatever money was coming my way, I was saving like never. And whatever opportunity to borrow money came my way, I took it and I went to invest. So here's the thing. I go to London and I borrow money at 10%. I come to Congo, I invest at 30%. I live on the 20%, free cash flow. Just think about it. I'll stop there.
Thank you. We have an Ingalula. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ngala. I don't know why I just put Ngala. I normally go by Dolly, but this is my school account. But anyway, I might have two questions. So in terms of if I were to be an investor, is there any like legal files, paper documentation that we would get? Because, like have you said that before, there have been many people, they come, family members, and then they take your money and go just for their own, safety net of the investor to ensure that their money is going to be properly utilized. And then my second question is, with the new potential of Kitoko City being developed, do you see your company going there and developing, and because we all know that it's going to be the new Kinshasa within the next 10, 15, 20 years possibly, because everybody's going to want to be there. It's going to be something interesting. So what is your mindset towards that?
Good question. So I will tackle the second question first. I grew up in Congo, and these announcements of developing the western part of the city have always been there. The trouble that you have is these long-term projects are often at odds with governments who are fighting for re-election every 4 or 5 years, you see. So sometimes they will announce these particular projects, but to deliver them, because these are infrastructure projects we're talking about, as you said, 15, 20 years, it's difficult then for me to conceive of them knowing that I have short-term investors who have given their cash in order to expecting a return within 12 or 24 months. So yes, we are mindful of this project. Yes, we would like to explore them in due course, but realistically speaking, until it becomes such a reality, we can't really do much about this. Could you remind me of your first question, please?
I think
if we were to invest, put money into.
Absolutely. Yes, the vehicle is called a limited
project. Is there any like?
Yes, the vehicle is called a limited liability partnership. So it's by the way, Yetu PIC is a UK-based vehicle. And when you will be investing, you'll be investing into a UK account. Although I'm currently based here in Kinshasa and we are investing in DRC, but the vehicle is based there. We're deploying assets into Africa. And this is also for added security because we have to have a framework that allow us to deal with each other in a very, very transparent manner. So first thing that happens is if someone is interested, we direct them first of all to our website where there is the information. The person then considers all the information, because before you even invest $1, we want you to understand. Why? Because you will become a partner. You'll be like me. So if tomorrow there is someone to talk about this project in the US, it could be you, Galula. So we want you to understand what is it that you are getting into. And if you decide this is for you, then we recommend you the account where you could invest. Of course, you sign the paperwork, you become a partner. But although you are a partner, you will still have what is called day-to-day control. So you will still have an ability to express your views because your money is at stake. See, and this is what we love about Yetu PIC. It's a very, very democratic way of allowing us, the Congolese community, because we are very much short on capital and on trust amongst ourselves, to learn to work with each other. I'm from London, you are in the US, we've never met each other until this day. Why should you trust me? So there needs to be a legal framework that can govern how we interact with each other until we develop the ability to work with each other for bigger projects, because there are bigger projects coming down the road.
All right, so I see 4 more people on my screen. These are the last questions that we'll take for today. If you obviously have more questions, what we're gonna do, we'll be sending a follow-up email where you can register and sign up so that Yetu PIC can be in constant communication with you. And also you'll have the option to sign up for CDIS's emails as well. So let me go back to the list here. The first person that I see is Rachel Arusha. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, and thank you, Baraka, for being here today. I have a quick question, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this today, but how heavily involved is the government in your projects? I know you've now been investing for a decade. Have you come across any roadblocks set by the Congolese government?
Good question. Actually, up until now, the government hasn't really been getting in the way. But it just happens to be that we have a president who also comes from the diaspora. So between ourselves, I can definitely announce that we are in discussion with a unit of the presidency of the DRC to create a platform that will allow the average investor, wherever they happen to be in the diaspora, to invest in a secure way in DRC. It could be through Yetu PIC or through any other vehicle that deal with different type of assets. So definitely there is a government initiative to start tapping into the diaspora. By the way, everything that we're doing here is not really new. We are not reinventing the wheel. For those of you who are interested to learn more about this particular idea, I will direct you to this book that you can find on Amazon, Diaspora for Development in Africa. It's a fantastic read, which was the cornerstone of much of our thoughts when we began this particular project. What they are saying here basically is that the diaspora of developing countries can be a potent force for development through 4 key mechanisms. One is remittances. Now, it's no longer a secret that we, the diaspora, we do remit back to Congo or Africa far more than it does receive in foreign aid. That's the first thing. Promotion of trade is another asset in our arsenal that we can deploy. Investments, which is what we're talking about today. And finally, knowledge as well as technology transfers. So these are the ways that we, the diaspora, can, as CDIS says, have an impact here in DRC. So what we are trying to do at Yetu PIC is just to channel some of these ideas into something much more concrete than just a theoretical textbook.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the next person, which is Patrick, not to be confused with Patrick's iPhone. So Patrick, if you don't mind unmuting and asking your question.
Well, thank you very much. And this is not really a question, but I would like to congratulate you, Baraka, for this initiative and this nice presentation. Myself, I am a financial, professional, and my concentration is really in financial engineering, the kind of stuff that you're doing here. And I sent you a private message on the chat, on the chat room. So I was wondering if you can just respond back to me privately. And this was just a way to put a face to my question so that we can follow up, offline. And definitely I'm very much interested in what you're doing. And I congratulate you and really I commend you highly. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Patrick. Now we have, so I don't know if this is Monsieur or Madame Ntumba. I saw that you have several questions that you've answered here. I think Baraka has already answered a few of these. So if you can just make it, maybe ask one question in particular.
Yes, and thank you. And thank you for answering some of these questions. Maybe the question that I have now is whether or not Yetu PIC has financial statements.
Good question. So Yetu PIC was incorporated in 2017. We wanted to get started, but sadly, there was a gentleman called Joseph Kabila holding on to power for 2 years in Congo. So the project that we had, which we wanted to launch back then, could not be launched because of the political climate, which needed to be much better in order for it to be, in order for us to come to you guys and start talking realistically about investing in DRC. So until the election happened, until the new government really was in place, now we have a second government within the 5 years of Tshisekedi, but the climate wasn't really good. So our projects, we are launching them right now again because it wasn't really good. So everything that we've done in the past has been done as private investment between me and a few other investors. It's only these ones that we are projecting for 2021 onwards, which are going to be very much documented. And by the way, our accountant is a firm called Ernst & Young. So in terms of accounting, you can't get better than that. So in terms of financial statements, you will have everything that you need moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna move to David, and sorry, if you have any further questions, either send him a private message or put it in the main chat and we will capture it to make sure you get a follow-up. So David, if you don't mind unmuting yourself and asking one brief question, feel free to do so.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm David, and it's really great being here today. I'm really interested in real estate, and here in Nairobi, we have been doing some amazing projects. So we have an open house going on right now, and I've been developing a trial project in the Kasai region in the DRC. So I was wondering if there's somebody who'd like to team up and help me, because I just joined the meeting and as I was driving, I didn't get the entire thing. So somebody who would be willing to help me understand what Baraka said. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, great question, David. Perhaps to be fair with you, what we could do is we could exchange privately after this session, and then I can take you to what we've done, and then we can explain me what you are doing, and we can explore how we can collaborate, because it is a fact that the demand for property across DRC is huge. So we are at this stage focusing on Kinshasa, but beyond Kinshasa, we already have calls to go to Lubumbashi, Goma, Bukavu, and the other cities across the DRC. So I would love to explore a way to work with you, and perhaps the best way to do that would be to speak privately.
Sure. So should I send you my email right now, or?
Absolutely. I'll also put for those of you who would like to. But those who have completed the survey, we put at the beginning of the chat, if everybody goes up at the beginning of the chat, you will see a small survey there. There is an ability to put your email, and we can always follow up on this conversation, because we only have an hour or so here. Obviously, we can't answer all the questions in this time frame.
Jim, do you mind also putting the survey form again in the chat? So folks, we have you guys did the survey to kind of give Baraka an idea of who's interested here, but we also have a quick form that you can fill out if you're interested in getting more communications. Please feel free to fill this out right now or as we continue to talk. So we have one last question that we're going to take from Patrick. Patrick, if you don't mind, just in the interest of time, please make your question concise and just ask one, and we will go from there. So feel free to unmute yourself. All right, I think Patrick might be having some tech issues, so we will go from there. I just want to thank everyone. So I kind of just hopped in here. My name is Lukoa Kasomo. I'm actually the co-founder of the Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit, along with Jim Ngokwe, and then we also have Laura Coupe, who's a part of this. And we're just really happy, and we want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your morning, afternoon, or evening to attend today's session. So just a little bit on us. As Jim mentioned, we created the Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit so that we could provide presentations like this along with networking opportunities to the diaspora. We'll be having some more. If you are interested in learning more about our future events, please, please, please make sure you fill out that survey so that we can add you to our listserv. Also, later on this year, in the fall, we will be having our second summit, the Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit in Washington, DC. So if you sign up on that listserv, that way you'll be able to get information about all of our future events and more information about the summit as we are in the midst of planning. So I'm going to give a couple minutes if you have questions specifically for the Congolese Diaspora Impact Summit. We'll take like a couple, and then from there we will close out and let you all have the rest of your day. So anyone has any questions about what we do, our work, or kind of just in general wanting to know more about maybe future plans, let us know right now. And then from there, we will close out. And before we close out, I just want to put out a message to Baraka, Jim, and Laura, who are on here. Make sure you guys stay on, so don't leave. But when we close out, everybody else will be able to leave. So if you have any questions, now is your time to ask. All right, so I am not seeing any hands being raised. So again, please fill out the survey that Baraka provided. Also fill out the Google form that we have inserted here, which you will be able to get some more information. And as we've mentioned here, if you have any more like direct questions that you just want to ask Baraka directly, you can email him at baraka@yetupic.com. So there's his email address. And again, thank you everyone. Have a wonderful morning, rest of the afternoon or evening. And we look forward to connecting with you all.